Hello buddy, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about the 8.6 support tier list. So, we're going to first off just talk about some of the new considerations for the patch. I do have an 8.6 patch notes video that has a lot of depth to it, so be sure to watch that if you haven't watched that yet. I also have an 8.6 top 5 champions for each role if you want to know about the other roles. And I have both of those linked here in the Google Doc, which you can find in the description of this video. You can also find timestamps, so if you don't have time to watch the whole thing, you can jump around to your favorite champions to hear about them. So first off, we're just going to go over a couple of the major considerations, shifts in the meta, and then we'll go down and start going through the tier list itself. Here's kind of a preview of what's going on. We have Lulu, Nami, Janna, Zyra, Rakan, Alistar, Sion, Karma, Soraka, and Sona all in the top 10. We'll spend most of our time talking about those. We'll talk a little bit faster about the tier 3, Leona, Blitz, Taric, Tahm, Braum, Morgana, Bard, Shen, Thresh. And then I listed some kind of honorable mentions here at tier 4. I'm going to go down. I'm not going to go down on, I'm not going to go over those in depth, rather. But I do have them listed here. I don't keep up with this all the time. I don't update this every patch. This is pretty much like these champions are on the radar. You can win with them, but I don't recommend playing them in most scenarios, although there are some spots where you could play them. And then with each champion as well, I provide you with a little mini guide. So if you want to know the runes that I have for the that I recommend for the champion, the items that I recommend for the champion, then I have that linked as well. So for example, if we click on Lulu, the first one, we have runes that I recommend, items, and then if I have an in-depth guide available, then I also link that in the Google Doc. I have a lot of guides for a lot of champions out there, and I'm constantly adding on more. I don't have them for all, but if I do have it ready for you, then I have that linked at the bottom of that document as well. So I have that updated and ready to go for the top 20 champions, which is tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So check that out in the Google Doc if you're interested. Okay, let's go ahead and get going here. All right, so enchanters get even stronger on this patch. So they were already really strong, and they're going to be a lot stronger. One of the major things that a lot of... Now, I watched Freak's patch notes video, and then I also watched Skara's patch notes video. I watch them almost all the time just to kind of see, well, what do they think about it? What's their perception of it? And then I also look at things like the Mobalytics tier list, and then a few other tier lists out there online as well, just to kind of get a vibe for what other people are thinking about the meta right now. A lot of people are sleeping on Chrysalis, or they were in those tier lists, or not in the tier lists, in the patch notes videos rather. In other content creators are sleeping on Chrysalis. This thing is a really big deal. I've had an opportunity to play with it for a few days. I talked about it in my patch notes before I even played with it. I already knew it was going to be really good. This is the new rune in the Resolve tree, and this is exceptionally good for enchanters. The reason for that is enchanters have really low base health, and 60 starting health is a very large percentage of extra health for them. I mean, you're thinking champions like Lulu start with like 525 health. That's an extra 11% health at level 1. That's a really big deal. And the issue with this is also, or the good part about it is, it not only gives you health, but it transitions into a useful stat later on. So it transitions into ability power, and that's massive, because you don't need the health as much in the mid game as Lulu. Like, it's okay, sure, 60 health, but it's not really that valuable if you think of just this rune from a stat perspective. You know, 60 times 2.66, that's only 160 gold worth of stats early on in health. That's really important on enchanters, but that's not really super cost efficient. But later on, once you get that 15 ability power, once it transforms, well, all of a sudden, that's pretty valuable. That's 326 for a minor rune. So that's pretty good, and it's not that hard to activate this. You just have to have 4 either kills or assists, and this turns on. So it'll turn on about right when you want it to in the mid-game, you know, between probably around level 7, level 10. Somewhere in there, it'll activate and switch over to AP. So that's really good. This is not something... You will get it on some tanks, but it's not amazing on all tanks because a lot of tanks don't really utilize the ability power that well. So this is something specifically designed to be awesome for enchanters because it gives them durability early and then transitions into AP later, which is pretty sweet. So that is a really big deal that you can combine this with bone plating. And I talked about this when this got released too. A bunch of people were sleeping on this saying, oh, I don't think it's that good. Oh, you can abuse this. You know, if they just auto attack you and then don't trade back or don't do any other attacks, it's worthless. It's really good, and a lot of people are figuring out that this is good now. So it hasn't taken long for people to figure out about this, but this was something else a lot of content creators sleeping on. I was on board with this from day 0 before it was even released. I knew this was going to be a great rune. So now you can combine both of these on enchanters, go bone plating and chrysalis, and you're really hard to kill. Really hard to kill. For an enchanter early on, you're deceptively durable. Because the bone plating doesn't proc until after resistances have applied. So it's even better than it appears, because it seems like, oh, 20 damage, that's not that big of a deal. If it blocks 20 damage, well, if someone's going to do 50 damage to you, and you have 100 armor, this is strictly hypothetical, but you have 100 armor, that's going to block 50% of the damage. That's going to take it from 50 damage down to 25 damage. Then the 20 damage block applies. So then it blocks 20 damage. So you're only taking 5 damage off of that. And it blocks it up to 3 times. So it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but because it applies after resistances, it's actually quite a bit. So it's really nice. Adds a lot of extra survivability, especially early on. So these two combined are making enchanters very, very strong. Because historically, how do you deal with enchanters most of the time? You all-in them and kill them, right? Early on. You know, you get them with your Leona, you get them with your Blitzcrank, your Zyra, and you just kill them because they're going to outscale you, so you have to abuse them early. And I'm talking about champions like Lulu, Janna, Nami, Soraka. All these champions. You're going to lose extended trades and long fights with them, and you're going to lose long games with them because of the way that enchanter itemization works. I have a whole video about that on the channel if you want to check that out. But once the enchanters get things like Redemption, Ardent Censer, Locket, Mikhail's, these types of items, those are just way, way better than tank items right now. As support, because they stack multiplicative with each other because of that plus healing stat, and they just have a lot more options in terms of team fighting utility for enchanters. So they're going to outscale, and they're going to win extended trades, and now it's really hard to punish them the only way that historically you could punish them, which is to all-in engage and try to kill them. This makes this a lot harder, so that makes enchanters a lot stronger. Also, they get 65 health just for going into the resolve tree. So if they go, what's really common is to go airy, the standard airy build, the airy mana flow, celerity, scorch, and then go into resolve. Then you get a ton of aggression early on, and if anyone tries to counter back and all in you, then you're probably gonna win anyways, because now you have chrysalis and bone plating to protect you, and you get 65 health for going into resolve. So it's a really, really good rune setup right now, and item setup for enchanters, so they are extremely strong right now. And just the meta itself is shifting as well, to where we're going to be seeing more Ginsus. This is another thing that a lot of people don't understand. Let me pull this up real quick for you. I'm not going to go over this a ton. Be sure to watch the whole patch notes video if you want more details about it. I'm just going to pop open the Google Doc here real quick. Talk about Ginsus. A lot of people are thinking this is a nerf. This is not a nerf. At least as it's described on the League Wikia and in the patch notes, it's not a nerf. Right here, it just says 48% attack speed. And one of my viewers told me that this is potentially bugged to where it only gives you 48% attack speed. But in the patch notes themselves, let me pull it up. So we'll see if this is bugged or not. I'm going to have to get some confirmation and look this up to see, like, what's up with this. But the way that it's described in terms of the attack speed scaling, it says you get a 48% of your total attack speed. And that would make sense because that's what matches the rest of what the item is looking to do. And they even bolded total. So it's intended to be total attack speed. So it's not you get 8% like a normal attack speed bonus. It's you get an additional 48% of all of your attack speed as it goes through. So if you have 100 attack speed total, like plus 100 attack speed, yes, you would get 48%. But if you have 200 total attack speed, you would get 96% extra attack speed. And I think that's how it works. Someone told me it was bugged. I haven't confirmed. But if that's how it works, then Ginsu's is going to be extremely strong right now. So I'll work out some math here for you. Basically, what it comes down to with Kog'Maw, that new Ginsu's gives out 91% extra attack speed off of just lethal tempo, alacrity, just the base stats on Gensu, and having 2 points in Q. So if you just rush Gensu, no other items, you're getting 2,275 gold, extra attack speed. That doesn't include AD, that doesn't include AP on the item, nothing else. Just straight up, that's how much attack speed you get. And if you go for Wit's End, then it gives you even more. So it starts scaling insanely well, and I had one of my buddies try it with Twitch with Gensu's as well. You get 100% extra attack speed with Twitch, and if you go Blade the Ruined King, then that takes it up to a 33.25 gold value. So this thing, and it has a base value of 2468. So that's 2468 plus whatever these numbers are for a 3,000 gold item. So I think Gensu's is extremely strong. I think a lot of people think it's a nerf. They're like, oh, you can't rush it or you can't get it first or second item. Yeah, you can. And it's really good still on Kog'Maw and Varus. I think people are just doing the math wrong on it. I think a lot of people are overlooking that lethal tempo, if you take that, and alacrity and all of the runes go into how much extra on hit you get. So basically, that's going to make enchanters even stronger is the bottom line here for the support tier list. And the reason for that is Ardent Censer is really good with Gensu's because you can double proc Ardent Censers, the on-hit buff, and anyone who buys Hurricane, which are most of the Gensu users, all of the Hurricane bolts will also apply Ardent Censer. So Ardent Censer gets a lot stronger with Gensu. Just enchanters in general, especially Lulu and Janna, who have these extra attack modifiers for 80 carries, are going to be really strong on those hyper carries, so that's pretty good. And then Shurelya's just also came out on this patch, which gives some pretty good engage options. I don't get Shurelya's all the time. It's obviously really good on Rakan, but it is an option on champions like Lulu or Janna if you have a hard engaged team. You know, if you have something like a bunch of bruisers that need to run in there, you've got like a Nasus on your team, an Olaf, a Skarner, Hecarim, stuff like that wants to be really fast. Shurelya is a decent option, but I think in general you won't see it a lot. It's kind of a niche item, but it's a nice item to have. It's another tool in the tool belt. So yeah, Enchanter's going to get a lot bigger. You're going to see a lot more damage junglers and tops. A lot of this has to do with Conqueror because Conqueror is extremely good against tanks top lane, and you're going to see a lot of bruisers using Conqueror. So you're just going to have to fight fire with fire and just go for damage dealers a lot of times. So I don't think we're going to be seeing as many tanks top. We'll see some. I mean, my tier list, I believe I had Nasus as sort of just a solo queue god at Platinum and lower. He's extremely strong. He's a special kind of tank because of Wither. And Wither shuts down these Conqueror users most of the time, unless they get a Quicksilver Sash. And that's why I say at Platinum and lower, because higher level players will get the Quicksilver Sash. And if you can get rid of his Wither, then you can definitely kill him. But Nasus is just a beast. He's still really good in solo queue. But outside of that, you're going to see things like Fiora come back. I think Fiora is the best Conqueror user that I've seen. So she's super strong with it. Camille is going to be really good. Now, Camille doesn't use Conqueror. She's still going to probably use Comet. But she's still going to be a force. And then you might see champions like Jax come back into the top lane with Conqueror. I'm not sure about that. I think he's better in the jungle, but you might see him. And then if you do, I think Renekton's also potentially really good with Conqueror because he has a lot of aggression early on. And he can use things like Chrysalis, which is also going to be pretty good top lane for AD champions. Not tanks, but champions who have really high AD ratios. I think that Chrysalis could be pretty good top. So they could go bone plating Chrysalis on Renekton with Conqueror. And that could be a pretty disgusting, oppressive early lane. Yeah. Yep. I didn't look. I swear I didn't look before this video. I just thought of that in my head right now and just speculated it. And yeah, that's kind of what's going on up here. So now he's jumped up to a 57% win rate. He was much lower than that before. That's probably exactly what people are doing. Well, he took second wind, actually. I think Chrysalis would be really good because having that extra 9 AD would be great on Renekton because he has awesome AD ratios. Really, really good AD ratios. So yeah, you can go Conquer, Triumph, Tenacity, Coup de Grace, and then Bone Plating, and I would go Chrysalis, but second wind is pretty good in a poke lane, I guess. Because remember, the 20% true damage on Conqueror also applies to all abilities, and Renekton has some really heavy-hitting abilities, you know, between his Q and his W and his ultimate. He does quite a bit of damage, so you might see some more Renekton this patch. You know, he was kind of a sleeper. I mentioned him in my top 5 a little bit. I think I did at least. But Yeah, he's pretty good. And, like, the reason is, like I said before, it's his abilities get that extra damage. And he is the hardest hitting, one of the hardest hitting early top lane bruisers that has a lot of ability damage. You know, Jax doesn't do a lot of damage before he gets items. Irelia doesn't do a lot of damage. Fiora doesn't do a ton of damage before items, but Renekton does it right off the bat, just off of his core abilities. He does quite a bit. So, he definitely might be seeing a little more Renekton top lane. So, anyways, enchanters are very good with, you know, and junglers that run Cinderhulk, Warmogs also got nerfed. Now, things like Zac and Sejuani are still pretty good, so you will still see some tanks that can be good. I just think you're going to see less of them. I think a lot of people are going to be playing more Press the Attack, that's what PTA is, Conquer, and Predator junglers. So if you do see tanks, I think it would be likely to be something like a Warwick or a Skarner or an Olaf or something like that. Like these damage type of tanks, I think will still be popular. But I think you'll see less Ramesses, like Sejuani's, and things like that. But, you know, if you are going to see tanks, it'll probably be Sej and Zac because they were so over the top anyways. And they're still good. But anyways, all of this means enchanters are good. Because they shield and protect, and they buff up people who do damage quite a bit. At least Lulu and Janna do. So, and Lulu and Nami are very good with divers. So, you know, I think that that's going to continue the rise of enchanters here. But yeah, I expect to see a lot more damage dealers top lane and jungle on this patch. Then finally, Caitlyn and Jen are coming back. They're becoming very popular. I'm not a believer in Caitlyn at all at Platinum and lower. I have seen some good Caitlyn's. Caitlyn definitely can win. But the problem is people do not use her traps correctly or at all in a lot of Platinum level games. Like, Caitlyn's big strength, and they don't auto-attack enough. Caitlyn's big strength is at 650 range early on. She can really poke people out. She can zone people with traps. So, you know, ideally what she wants to do is push in with her Q, auto-attacks, and once you get them under tower, you set those traps down, and you make it really annoying for them to try to CS under tower. You have a support that gives you good vision coverage, also applies pressure and poke, and yeah, that's how you do it. And then you just end up taking the tower, and then you rotate with Caitlyn, you take the first tower, second tower, and then just keep sieging. So you have to keep the momentum going. So if she gets to do what she wants to do, and you do it well, then she's great. So in pro play, she's awesome. When you have a very deliberate siege comp, and you just take your Caitlyn, you get the first tower, and you just, you know, move her around the map, protect her, then she's great. However, if it falls into Clown Fiesta mode, which is really common in solo queue, and people are just running around auto-attacking each other, and, like, not really focusing on objectives, not really using traps, then she falls off really hard. She has a notoriously awful mid-game, and I would say her late game's not even that great anymore compared to a lot of other champs. But, you know, once she gets that Infinity Edge as her first item, or I guess sometimes she'll go static and then Infinity. But Infinity is really, really good with her because it has favorable interactions with her headshot. So the headshot can crit, and the headshot is a modified auto-attack damage. So crit, it does crit. The headshot can crit, basically. And so she can end up headshotting people for like 400 or 500 after you get Infinity Edge. It's a lot of damage. So really, I think you're highly incentivized to rush a pure Infinity Edge on her. Like, the problem with Infinity Edge rushing on a lot of champs is that you don't have attack speed to go along with it, and most abilities don't crit. So that's why a lot of people will get like a BF sword and then some kind of Zeal item. They'll usually get Static Shiv, and then they'll get Infinity Edge so that you have the attack speed to go along with it. And Infinity Edge is very expensive too. But with Caitlyn, because your primary source of damage, your headshots, can crit, and they aren't really determined by attack speed, then that makes Infinity Edge a lot better. So yeah, I don't know if... Yeah. So he just straight up rushes Infinity Edge, and that's what I think a lot of Caitlyn's will do. And like I said, that's weird. A lot of people would rather get a Static Shiv first and then Infinity Edge on most crit users, but Caitlyn's very special because of her headshot interactions with Infinity Edge. So yeah, anyway, so she's really good if she pressures early, but she can fall behind. and if people don't use her correctly. So, you know, at higher level play, you might see the return of push comps. Like, I think we might see Karma coming back at high level play. You might see Nami coming back at high level play, Lulu coming back at high level play, because all of these are pretty good push comps. Like, they're very good early pressure push with Caitlyn type of comps. So she's good. As the elo goes up, she gets a lot better. People just don't use her correctly in lower elo. I think her stats are also dragged down a little bit by a lot of people who get autofilled will play Caitlyn because they think she's really safe, you know, and they just hang out in the back with her and, you know, just try to farm. And that's really a fail. You don't want to do that. If you're autofilled and you just want to play safe and farm, just play Twitch or Tristana. Like, they scale so much better than she does. Are people doing the Gensu Twitch thing yet? Nah, people are still on that Infinity Edge. I'm waiting to see if people are going to pick up this Gensu Twitch build that I think might become popular. Like the Blade of the Rush Gensu, Hurricane, Blade of the Ruined King, and then take Lethal Tempo. But it looks like people aren't biting on that yet. Although, to be fair, he hasn't been played a lot. So, you know, he's only played on this site every couple of days on the data that it keeps. So, we might see that some more, but Twitch is extremely good on this patch. Anyways, so Caitlyn's coming back, so enchanters that can push and pressure early are really good with Caitlyn, and then also Jen is coming back. Now, these buffs to Jen a couple of patches ago, I didn't think they would be that big of a deal, but they have been a pretty big deal. Jen is really good with them. The nerf to Fleet Footwork also helps Jen a lot, because he's not amazing with that rune. He's okay, but he would much rather run Comet, so he has better pressure early on. But they gave his abilities more AD, so they gave his Dancing Grenades a bit more scaling later on, which doesn't affect his early game, but they increased his passive quite a bit, especially early on. So he does pick up a few extra points of damage there, and then his W, Jen's damage now marks enemy champions with Caught Out, allowing the root with Deadly Flourish. Okay. So you can hit them with your grenade now and then get them caught out. So they don't just have to be in your trap, and you don't just have to auto attack them. So now you can combo grenade with Deadly Flourish, which makes it a lot easier to land your combos. So he does a lot of damage early on, and you're starting to see him in pro play a little bit more, like 8.5. He has a lot of power early on, and the fact that they are nerfing Xayah as well is going to create a bit more space for him. They nerfed Xayah and Rakan's interaction with the W, which is a pretty big deal. So we're starting to see a little bit more early game pressure off of Jen. Now, Jen's not amazing with all enchanters. He's really good with Nami because they can chain CC together. He's like okay with Janna and Lulu. But he is another early pressure champion. So you want to take something that can pressure early, like Lulu, Nami, Leona, Zyra. So there are a lot of good early pressure champions with him. But so the early game is coming back. So now I think we have a pretty balanced AD carry meta in terms of, like, we have some early game options with Caitlyn and Jen. Then of course you have the late game scalers, auto attackers with like Tristana, Twitch, and then you have kind of these spellcaster utility type of champions like Xayah that are pretty strong. You know, we don't really have like Sivir and Ashe back, so we don't have like the full-on utility stuff back, although Varus is basically a utility AD carry that does pretty heavy damage, and he's around. So there are a lot of different AD carries and styles that can be pretty strong right now. So I think the AD carry meta is becoming a bit more balanced. Okay, so anyways, how does this impact supports? Alright, so top of the support list, I think, is Lulu. Right now, she is the most banned support as well, so you don't get to play her all the time, but if you do get to play her, she's really strong. So what's up with Lulu? I'm just releasing a guide today as well for Season 8 Lulu, so be sure to check that out for the details. But the bottom line is she just has a lot of synergies with the runes and the itemization right now. Chrysalis and Bone Plating are awesome on her because historically she has been able to get poked out early on, and that's another thing that's helped her out too, is Karma has been nerfed a lot over the last, 5 months or so. Karma's been nerfed a lot, and Sona was nerfed a lot, and Janna was nerfed a lot, and Lulu was kind of left alone. So it has given her a lot more power. Especially the nerfing of Janna has really created a space for Lulu as kind of this premier shielder. And the big deal is that she only has a 10-second cooldown on her shield early, and Janna has a 18-second on her shield. And as Janna, you have to choose if you want early game aggression, which is pretty important right now. You have to get points in W. So you have to get usually 2 to 3 points in W in lane and as Janna if you want that play style. Whereas with Lulu, you can comfortably get, you know, multiple points in your E because it's your damage, and that also transitions as your shield mid-game. So 1 point is your offense and your primary defense, which is awesome. So that versatility really allows Lulu to go hard early. She's a great Aerie and Scorch user, which is important right now on Enchanters. Because once again, Aerie doubles up as damage early and defense later, just like Help Picks here. There are a lot of invisible champions that are becoming pretty problematic right now. If you think about Twitch especially, she's very good against Twitch early on because when she puts picks on him with the E for damage, he can't go invisible because it gives true sight of him for 4 seconds. So it makes it much easier to round up Twitch and kill him. That's also pretty good against Vayne. It's also good against Kha'Zix, who tries to go invisible and run around. It's good against Shaco. All of these champions are pretty popular right now. It's good against Akali, not as popular, but it's definitely a case where that comes up. So, yeah, there's a lot of these kind of invisible champions that are running around, and she can see them with Help Picks. That's not the primary reason you pick her, but it is a very, very nice perk that she has. The other thing about her is she just scales insanely well with a lot of the very popular ADs right now. So she's really, really good with Varus because she gives us on-hit damage. And I do the math in my Lulu support video. Let me pull that up real quick here. I just pull up the Google Doc. So her passive at level 9 is 1,500, almost 1,600 gold value because you give 63 on-hit damage. 63. Like, Varus deletes people with his on-hit damage a lot of times, and he's only doing like 27. So on-hit damage is worth 25 gold a pop, so you're basically giving your AD carry or your Master Yi. It works on melee champions too. You don't see the picks on melee champions because it's like right in their face, but it does proc on melee champions as well. So at level 9, you're getting 1,575 gold worth of value. And at level 18, you're getting almost 3,000 gold worth of value out of your passive. Now, that's a powerful passive. Now, compare that with like Janna's E, which gives out AD, and that AD is only worth 1,400 gold, which is good, but it's still not as good as Lulu's passive. It depends on the circumstances. But another part about Lulu in terms of Lulu versus Janna is when you put picks on your AD carry, when you shield them and give them that passive on-hit damage, that lasts for the entire 6 seconds regardless of whether or not that shield breaks. On Janna, if the shield breaks, they don't get the AD anymore. So if you put this on someone who's taking a lot of heat, who's taking a lot of damage, then they're not going to benefit from that AD a lot because it's going to break. So if someone's like in your AD carry's face and they bust that shield almost immediately, your AD carry's not going to benefit from any of that AD. Whereas with picks, you know, you're protecting that Kog'Maw, you shield him, Kog'Maw is going to keep the picks on him. He's going to keep that damage buff for the entire duration. Very, very big deal. The other thing is obviously her Whimsy. This is ridiculously strong. This is one of the most powerful enchanter abilities in the game. It's a 2.25 second, basically a stun. Not quite, it doesn't hold them in place, but they can't do anything for 2.25 seconds. They can't cast spells, they can't use summoners, they can't do anything. So this just completely wrecks anybody that's melee. Anyone that gets close enough. Lulu's, her only downside is she has really close ranges. So it's 650 on her shield and 650 on her Whimsy. And that is scary because you have to get pretty close to people. Versus Janna's shield is like 800 range and Nami can throw her wave. I think it's like 900 range and it can bounce around all kinds of different people. So Nami and Janna have much longer ranges. We'll talk about them in a second. They're my second and third on the tier list. But Lulu is close range, but this is such a high impact spell because it's always useful. So you can polymorph a melee champion who's really problematic, like, you know, the Fiora's running in, the Camille's running in, Shaco or Kha'Zix are trying to, like, bust up your AD carry. 2.25 seconds is almost as long as a Malzahar ult. And it's only on a 12-second cooldown. Now, it doesn't do any damage, but it is big time useful. The other thing is it can give out 45% attack speed and 30% movement speed to an ally. And if you're wondering, well, what's that worth? That's worth 2,310 gold at level 9. So combined, at level 9, with the passive, plus the movement speed, plus the attack speed, if you put that on your AD carry, the Varus or the Kog'Maw or whatever, you're giving your AD carry almost 3,900 gold worth of value. That's about 13 kills worth of value. Think about that. 13 kills. So if your AD carry at level 9 only has 3 kills, they basically have 16 kills if you're Lulu, and you put the shield and the W on them. That's pretty insane. So yeah, she buffs the crap out of... And this is what I mean by scaling. Some people are like, what do you mean by scaling? What do you mean by saying that Lulu outscales Braum? Or what do you mean by saying that Lulu outscales Tahm Kench? This is what I mean. She gives insane buffs, insane stats to the people that she buffs up. And that doesn't even include how the itemization works that I talk about once again in that itemization video about why enchanter items scale better than other items. But that's basically why Lulu's really good, is that she has this very versatile playstyle where early on you have an extreme amount of harassment. I mean, with Airy plus Scorch plus Pix plus Frostfang, you know, one combo early on, you just E, auto attack Q, and you'll take off like a third of their health, maybe half of their health on squishy targets in lane. It does a lot of damage. And it's very reliable because this is a point-click ability, this E. You don't have to hit any skill shots. Nothing. Just straight up E them, auto Q them. There's half their health. So it's very, very reliable. And then it transitions into the mid game for the shield. And then you have this insane, like, either crazy CC or crazy buff on your AD carry. You have a super high scaling passive that does a lot of damage. You have some decent wave clear early on with your Q. Like, it's not amazing, but it's okay. It's 80 base damage that can hit every minion in a straight line when it's coming down. Now, it does reduce damage, but still, it hits all of the minions. So that can help out a little bit early. If you want to be a poke lane, if you have something like a Caitlyn, you can, in theory, get more points in Glitter Lance. You know, if you want to get less points in your shield and your E, and you just want to push the wave really quickly, you have a Sivir on your team, a Caitlyn on your team, something like that, you can get 2 or 3 points in Glitter Lance and really start wave clearing. So that's really good. Then your ultimate's really good too. You know, it's only a 110-second cooldown, which is massive. I think Janna's ult is 150. So this is going to be up a lot. And it is an instant infusion of health. So it gets around Ignite. It gets around the Onomicon. You can overheal people with this. So if that Olaf's running in full health and you just want a Wild Growth just to knock the person up, just to use it as CC, or you have a Yasuo on your team and you just want to, like, buff up the Yasuo to knock people into the air so he can ult, you can do that. Because you can overheal. It's fine. So if they're at max health, they're still going to get 300 bonus health if you do this. And it applies a slow. It's really, really good. Now, it doesn't scale with plus healing and shielding, which is a thing to be aware of. So that kind of sucks. But everything else about it is just amazing. And it does have 900 range, which is really good. So it's not as... doesn't have as much raw power as something like a Janna ult in the right circumstances. Because Janna ult heals everybody on your team for just a ludicrous amount. But it is really nice for divers, for the Olafs, for the Skarners, for the Zacs, things like that, because it has 900 range and it's just instant. Boom, there it is. You don't have to sit there and channel it. People can't run out of it. It just works. So that's really nice. So she's a great anti-assassin because of this boost up. Great anti-assassin that gets around Ignite. A lot more people are going to be taking Ignite. So great anti-assassin. You can boost him up. You can polymorph the assassin. You can shield your AD carry. And it also gives insane scaling if they can't get to your AD carry. So she's just really good in pretty much every situation right now. So that's why she's banned a lot. Okay, so Lulu's amazing. Who else? Nami. So Nami is someone else who has come to prominence lately. And you might say, well, why haven't we seen Nami a lot before? There have been metas where we've seen Nami a lot. We didn't see her last year because Janna was so oppressive. And Sona was so oppressive earlier on in the preseason, but those champs have been nerfed a lot now. So Nami's never like an awful champion. just historically, the problem with her is she hasn't been able to scale that well or leverage her strengths early game enough. But now she has the rune, she has the power. Other enchanters have been nerfed. And so it's really Nami's time to shine right now. She has a very favorable matchup against Lulu early on as well because she heals herself and does a lot of damage. So that's really strong. They have buffed her a little bit over time as well. I think they lowered the cooldown on the bubble. They may have increased the damage on the bubble. Excuse me. Well, let me just see. They have the history here. So she didn't get, like, any insane buffs, but... yeah, in 7.15, they lowered the cooldown on the bubble, which is nice. So, yeah, she hasn't had any buffs in a while. Back in Season 5, they increased her bonus movement speed that she got off of her passive, which is nice. Anyways, so what is it about Nami? You know, the big thing, Sona nerf, Janna nerf, Karma nerf. Okay, all three of those squeezed her out last year, so she didn't get to play a lot because those champions were all just better than she was. But now, all of them have been nerfed. She's a lot stronger. So she is just really, really powerful early game, especially because her damage is also her heal. So when you go up and you W somebody, it deals damage to them, and then the wave bounces back to you. In skirmishes, she's even better because you can get a triple bounce. If they try to all-in you, you can heal yourself, and then it'll bounce and hit an enemy, and then it'll bounce back and hit your AD carry. So you're getting some pretty big numbers. These numbers don't look that big, but if you think, you know, even when you have, let's say, even just 1 point in this, right? You're dealing 70 damage, and then it's bouncing back for 65. So you're dealing 70 damage, and you're healing for 55, which is a really big deal for only 70 cost. That's 120 value, and a heal is much more valuable than damage because of the way that it scales with resistances. I talk about that in my Enchanter video as well, about why heals are so powerful. So that's really good. So it's great trading. The runes are awesome, are also very good for her right now. So Airy is great because just like with Lulu, you can use it really well offensively early on because you keep healing yourself off of your waves. You can just walk up, auto attack W, auto attack, get some great trades in, stay really healthy. Mana Flow Band is amazing on her. Historically, a big problem with Nami is she can be a huge mana hog early on. So Mana Flow Band helps out tremendously. Celerity is really good on her. Just allows you to get in and out when you're trading, which is really nice so that when you grab that minion aggro, you can get away from them, take a lot less damage. And then, of course, Scorch is really good too because you're constantly hitting them in lane. And Chrysalis and Bone Plating are amazing. I think Nami is perhaps the best user of this because she doesn't need Second Wind. You know, before Lulu had Second Wind and she was already good with Bone Plating and Second Wind. Chrysalis is nice, and I would still get this on Lulu, but, you know, she still doesn't have a way to heal herself in lane. So early on, you can still get poked out by Karma, Nami, Zyra, stuff like that if you're Lulu. Well, with Nami, you're not going to get poked out because you have your W to heal yourself. So the only way really you're going to die as Nami is if they all in and kill you, and so having that extra health is good. And Lulu is, or Nami rather, is probably the best champion to scale with AP, one of them. Lulu's passive does scale, like, insanely well, but Nami's wave has crazy scaling, because not only does it give you, does it have AP scaling here, which is basically a 0.8, if it just hits 2 people, and it can go as high as a 1.3, so if you hit an enemy with a wave, it bounces back to you, and then it hits another enemy, then it's a 1.3 AP ratio, which is really high. But it also has this little caveat here, where every 100 AP, she gets another 7.5% efficiency on the bounces, which is crazy. Like, that's really, really good. I do have a Nami guide on the channel if you want to check that out. It's linked, you know, in the tier list when you look at the mini guides. But it talks about just how insane, like, AP is on her. Historically, we just haven't been able to get a lot of AP on Nami without, like, a troll build. So getting that extra 15 AP is a really big deal, and then getting AP off of sorcery is nice as well. So yeah, she has really great scaling with the runes. Her W has a great trade pattern to it. She can get a redemption early, which is awesome. It gives her a ton of extra mana regen, and she still has the flexibility of her build. She can get a Mikhail's. She can get Locket. She can get Ardent Censer. So she's good with a lot of different, the standard enchanter items are all pretty good on her. She has a 1.5 second stun that can hit multiple targets, potentially. Now, it is kind of tricky to hit this sometimes, but if you're consistently hitting this bubble, it's really powerful. It's great for chaining together with other CC. So if Zach engages on somebody, or you have a Jen who hits somebody with a W, then you can hit him with the bubble. Or you have a Varus who hits somebody with his ult, then you can hit him with the bubble. It's really good for chaining people together. So it's not the same as like Lulu's, not the same length as Lulu's Polymorph, but it has a lot more range. It has 875 range. It can hit multiple targets, and it makes them stay in place. Whereas with Polymorph, they can still run away or still run towards you. So that's really helpful. She gives people a lot of extra movement speed. I mean, 60 flat movement speed. And if you have 100 AP, you know, you get 20 more off of that for 1.5 seconds. Off of all of your abilities is really nice for helping people dive. So yeah, you can, you know, put your E on your Olaf and he's going to run in even faster. So that's really helpful. And then on Tidal Wave, if you hit enemies, it slows them down a lot and it doubles the speed on your allies. So it gives your allies 120 movement speed. So it's actually a pretty good engage tool if you throw it through your allies and hit enemies, which isn't always possible, but it is a nice little tool to have. So she has great trading early, pretty respectable CC with her W. Her E is really nice on champions that want to stick to people and run them down. So this does quite a bit of on-hit damage. We were talking about Lulu doing a lot of on-hit damage. This adds quite a bit too. So the total damage on this ability is basically, you know, 255 damage with a 0.6 ratio. So it's pretty good. And it has a really long slow too. It's 1 second per hit. So if you know, your AD carry or whomever auto-attacks them once every second, then they're going to be slowed for 3 seconds for the maximum amount, which is pretty nice. And finally, you have your ults on a pretty low cooldown, kind of like Lulu. It's 120 instead of 110. But it does knock people up, does some decent damage, and has a really long slow for 2 to 4 seconds that doesn't decay. So it's pretty nice. It's just like, you can just throw that in the middle of a fight, and it's just really disruptive. Like, it just stops people. It stops movement as well, so you can stop a Lee Sin from going on somebody. You can stop a Zac from going on somebody because it knocks them back, and it can knock them out of the air. So it does have a slight delay on the cast. So it's a little bit harder to use than something like a Janna Tornado to knock people out of the air, but it is useful. So yeah, she's just really good right now, and she has a lot of like really long ranges. So 725 on the W, and remember the W bounces though. It bounces for 725 also. So you can bounce the wave off of people. So sometimes you can't quite get to your AD carry. Maybe it's just not safe to go in there, so you can bounce it off of an enemy, and then it'll bounce to the AD carry. Or you want to do a little bit of extra damage to the enemy, help people kill them, you can bounce it off of your ally, and it'll bounce to the enemy. So it's a really fun bounce mechanic there. So she has nice range there, nice range there, nice range here. So she's a lot safer in terms of range than Lulu is. And she can speed herself up and get away a lot easier than Lulu can. So doesn't quite have the insane scaling with Lulu's W plus Lulu's passive. So Lulu will outscale her, but she does have a really nice early game, and she does have just a pretty well-rounded kit for the meta right now. Okay, so that's Nami, pretty strong. Same runes that I recommend on Nami and Lulu. Just Airy, Mana Flow, Celerity, Scorch, Bone Plating, Chrysalis, excellent. And then just kind of see what kind of boots you get. Ionian are good, they're greedy. Sometimes you might have to get Ninja Tabi or Merc Treads if they have an assassin that's fed. You want to use Frostfang early on. It does a lot of damage. It's real easy to proc. And then it just depends on the situation if you want to do Redemption, Ardent, Locket, or Mikhail. Check out the Lulu video. The same stuff that I talk about with items in Lulu and like when you should get different items also applies to Nami. So they're basically the same itemization, the same runes, similar style of champion. Nami just has that heal early on, and then Lulu's going to have better scaling. Okay, Janna. Still super strong. Janna is statistically going to be the most played and the highest win rate of those champions. because she's the easiest to play. She's the most consistent. Lulu is very rarely going to be much over like 50 to 51% win rate because she's hard to use. She gets punished easily because she doesn't have a heal in lane and her ranges are really short. So if you're out of position a lot, you know, you're going to get punished a lot more on Lulu than you will with Janna. Now, I do something a little different on Janna. I just go full out mid-game with Guardian, Bone Plating, Chrysalis, Revitalize, and then Zombie Ward and Genius Hunter. This is going to give you a ton of power in that mid-game once you get the Redemption and Locket, or once you get the, you know, Redemption plus Mikhail's. Having that extra 40% CDR on those items and on your sweeper is super powerful. Thank you for the sub. I appreciate it. So that's what I go. There are a lot of people, especially higher end pro people. Do I not have a pro builds? Thought I had one open. I guess I closed it. A lot of people are going to go with Airy, and then they're going to put a couple points in their W for lane. The reason that you'll see this is in high level play, like the laning phase matters a lot. It does matter in lower level play too, but games do get drawn out. So if you want to be really aggressive with Lulu or with Janna in lane, you know, you can get a couple of points in W early on. Harass with Airy, harass with your W, and Scorch. Put in a lot of damage. This has to be a mistake. There's no way he took Overgrowth on purpose. That rune is god-awful. He must have misclicked that. Some people will get things like Magical Footwear and Biscuit with her. No. You really, really want Chrysalis plus Bone Plating on her. So, you know, if you think you can be aggressive early on, then you can get away with going for the standard Airy package plus Chrysalis, Bone Plating, get like 2 or 3 points of W in lane, and then switch over to Shield for the mid-game. Totally doable. However, I would say if you're going to do that, I would just play Lulu. I mean, if Lulu's banned and you want to play Janna instead, you know, that's a possibility. Running this, though, they're never going to kill you with Guardian, Bone Plating, Chrysalis. You can still apply some decent damage early on. Let's just be real, though. Like, Janna's not going to do a lot early on, and you really want to max that shield as fast as possible because the shield is on a very low cooldown, or on a very high cooldown that you need lower. It's an 18-second cooldown on a little dinky shield, and you want that shield to hold because it gives your AD carry that AD for longer. So, you know, if you're going to get W, I would get no more than 3 points of W in lane for harassment. And I would just assume that if you're signing up for Janna, you're signing up for a losing lane probably, and you're going to dominate the mid and the late game. I mean, that's just pretty much what you're saying when you pick Janna. But she is very strong in the mid to late game for sure. She has excellent scaling on her abilities. She has the best scaling with plus healing and shielding outside of Soraka. But she's much safer than Soraka. I'm going to pull her up here. I don't know why I can never spot these champions fast enough. Yeah, so she has a 0.7 on her E. She has a 0.1 AD, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually really good. If you have 100 AP, that gives 10 extra AD, which is like a 350 gold value to your AD carry. So that's really nice. And then her ultimate heals for 150% of your AP and a huge base number on everybody on your team. So if you get this off and you channel it and they don't interrupt you, you basically win the team fight. If you do this, plus Redemption, plus Locket, there's pretty much no way you're ever losing a team fight. And that's why I like having Guardian on her, because it protects you. It makes sure that you don't die, and it also protects your allies. So remember, that Guardian shield applies to allies as well, so that will save your ally from that Zed or that Fizz or whatever. At least it's going to help. Airy is good, you don't have great harassment patterns early on. I mean, your W's okay. It has good scaling. I mean, you get 55 per level in it, which is good. But this shield is abysmal. This shield is trash. If you don't level it up, you really, really need to level this up. So I've talked about this a lot in past Janna videos. I'm not a huge proponent of maxing W. Get 2 or 3 points in lane if you want. You can get airy if you think you have a very aggressive lane. You know, if you're against like an Ezreal, I don't know, an Ezreal Tahm Kench or something like that. You know, and you have like a Varus or a Caitlyn or a Jen on your team, someone who can go pretty aggressive early on, then yeah, sure, you can get a couple of points in W. But, you know, she's basically one of the highest. She's right up there with Lulu, high scaling, supports in the game. And so she's still pretty good. I just think that Nami and Lulu are a bit better right now because they have much better aggression early on. Okay, let's talk about... I still think Zyra's really good. Zyra's not going to have a huge win rate, but she does have the aggression. She does have the power early on. If your team picks full AD, which might be likely with Conquer right now. I mean, if you have like a... trying to think. Like an AD jungler, you have like a Kayn. Shaco is probably going to be really popular right now. If you have like a Kayn or a Shaco or... you know, something like that, then... and then you have like a top lane, you know, Renekton, and then you have like a mid lane Zed or whatever. If you have 3 or 4 ADs on your team, Zyra can be a good pick. She's very good with Jen. She's pretty good with Caitlyn. Just anyone who has early game aggression, she's going to be great. Now, one problem with Zyra, though, is when the enchanters run, if they're smart, and they run bone plating plus Chrysalis, it can be pretty hard to kill them early on. But she can still bust up a Lulu and a Janna, especially if they go for like sorcery plus inspiration, which is a really greedy build early on. She can definitely kill them. So, you know, historically, still the same problem with AP champs. Their items are just very expensive. It's very difficult to get them. So if you fall behind early, it can be difficult to come back. But Zyra is very oppressive. She's very powerful. So if you do want to play her, I would, you know, consider her when you have a Jen is probably the best one on your team. Pretty good with Varus because you can chain together Varus's ult with Zyra's ult and it just deletes people. Pretty good with like Lucian if he runs press the attack early on. So there definitely are some pretty good matchups, and people are playing less Ezreal and Vayne right now. They're playing more of like the Zayas and Jinx, Twitch, stuff like that, like immobile 80 carries. So she can catch them out in lane pretty easily with her E and kill them. So the lower your elo, the better Zyra gets. She's excellent at gold and lower. She gets a little more questionable at platinum, but she's still serviceable. So it just depends on whether or not you can hit those E's. You can do a lot of good harassment with your Q plants in lane, but I have an entire guide. I think I have a Season 8 guide for Zyra on the channel. If I don't have Season 8, I definitely have a Season 7 guide. I guess I have Season 7 for now. And I'm probably going to add a Season 8 one here pretty soon. But, yeah, I would just go Comet, Mana Flow, Celerity, Scorch, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection. You know, you can go, like, you could still go Bone Plating Chrysalis if you want, but you should be the one doing the hitting, not getting hit most of the time as Zyra. She has really good ranges. A lot of people will go, like, Boots and Biscuits on her. The advantage of doing that is you get a little bit more sustain and you get some more value out of getting the boots. So you get, like, a 350 gold value off of those boots and the plus 10 movement speed they afford. But you lose the scaling of Eyeball Collection. Getting that 30 AP is a pretty big deal to help keep you relevant in the mid to late game. And Taste of Blood is really easy to trigger off of your plants. And that offers pretty good sustain in lane too. So it's not as much sustain as a Biscuit, but it's pretty legit and it allows you to go Eyeball Collection. Which gives you more power in the mid game. So she is good. If you want to get her, I think that Sorcerer Boots plus Eye of the Watchers, Leandries, Rylai's, Void Staff, Death Cap's the way to go. So yeah, viable, strong, good early game power, pretty good against enchanters, especially if they aren't privy to the resolve, getting Bone Plating plus Chrysalis. Okay, Rakan. I have Rakan a little bit lower than some other people might have him. He has a terrible early game, at least from what I've seen, and that's really kind of the drawback, is like Lulu, Nami, and Zyra just completely muscle up on him early on, especially Lulu just beats the daylights out of him early on, and then she transitions later. She's a total pest. She can polymorph him when he goes in. She can ult the person that he ults. It's just really hard to get through a Lulu later on. As Rakan, it can be really rough if you don't have cleanse. So if you take Unsealed Spellbook and you have cleanse to get rid of the polymorph, like, that's okay, but once it, you know, you're still using like a 2-minute cooldown in order, and like Lulu's using like an 8-second cooldown. It's a point quick ability, like she you know, she's not gonna miss it. So he can be good. He does have really good engage. They just did increase his AP ratios. They increased his shield jump, which is nice. He has Shirelia's Reverie, which is an excellent engage tool in his kit. So he's pretty good. He's still pretty good. I just feel that his early game is really rough. Now, there are some people, and I haven't tried this out. Maybe I have to try this out. I have been a huge critic of getting a lot of points in Q and taking Airy early. But with Bone Plating and now Chrysalis, you might be able to do that. Like, you might be able to trade a lot better early on if you do that. Because the thing was, I thought you were giving up too much durability to do that. I really liked taking Guardian in the past. But now that you can get Bone Plating and Chrysalis, that will give you a lot more power early on. And frankly, although this may not be ideal, like, his early game sucks so much, this might just be what you have to do. Like, I hate trying to use this ability. But you might just have to get it so they don't just completely run you over. And then maybe with Scorch and Airy, you can kind of do some respectable damage if you just spam your Q. The problem is it's hard to spam Q because it's on such a long cooldown. Even when you get points into it, it's still like a 9-second cooldown. And it's really hard to hit, too. So it has a super slender hitbox. You do get some pretty good value out of it. You get 45 extra damage. It does heal you, although the heal doesn't go up. The mana cost doesn't go up either, so that's nice. So, you know, when you get 3 points of this in lane, it's still a 9-second cooldown, but you can just spam it on them. It will proc Airy, it will proc Scorch, and you do heal yourself off of it. So it's like a really poor man's Nami early on if you take Airy and then try to get 3 points in Gleaming Quill. Just the trade-off, you know, there's always a price, and the trade-off for that is you're going to be a lot less mobile, which is kind of the hallmark of Rakan. You're not going to be able to W as much, so this is going to be just a full-on, like, engage Rakan. You're going to be bad in longer team fights because you're only going to have 1 point in W for that build. So if you get 3 points of Q in lane, then you're going to have to get Battle Dance next, probably. This is one of his really important abilities. That will also let you potentially use Frostfang on Rakan in lane. But yeah, your mobility around the map is going to suffer tremendously because you're not going to be able to hop around over walls. Because if you hop over a wall and you have an 18-second cooldown on this, it's not going to be up for a fight. And so that's just not going to be an option for you on the table. You're just going to have to save your W to use with your R to start a fight. So I don't know. He does, in my experience, he has a really rough early game. Maybe this could be the solution to it if you know, get a bunch of points in Q, at least 3 points in Q for lane, and then switch over to E, and then you run Airy, Scorch, and take Frostfang. Maybe that's enough to have some early game presence. Shirelia's is really nice on him. So I don't know. We'll see. You know, the other option that you can do is you can take Unsealed Spellbook still, and then the big thing about Unsealed Spellbook is that you can take Cleanse in the mid-game. You can switch over to Cleanse, which is very good against the hard CC of like a Varus hitting you in the face, or like a Morgana hitting you with a bind or something like that whenever you're trying to engage. That can be really pesky. So, you know, having that Cleanse to get you out of those heavy CC situations is really nice. Kind of in the mid-game, but you do give up all of your trading early, so I don't know. Rakan's okay. I think a lot of people are still just trying to figure out like how exactly you should build him. You see there's a lot of diversity in builds here. But yeah, I think that maybe, like, if you go with this Airy build, I might try that out tonight. I don't know. I try it out in a normal game and just see what happens. Yeah, maybe the introduction of Chrysalis is enough to where he could be an early game fighter. So we'll see. So I'm not entirely sure about Rakan. I do know that what I've been doing has been failing as Rakan lately, and that he feels pretty bad in this meta going Guardian Rakan. I've also tried Predator Rakan, which it doesn't work out that well most of the time. And a lot of it is you just, like, I just get dumpstered in lane. Like, you're just basically sitting there just shielding your AD carry, just trying to help them push. But if your AD carry just falls behind, if they just can't CS, like, there's just nothing you can do to take control of the lane. You're basically putting the lane in your AD carry's hand by doing that, and that just feels really dangerous to me. But maybe you could be more aggressive with this build, so we'll see. But yeah, he is the best engaged in the game right now. I just think that he gets dumpstered early on by Lulu, Nami, and Zyra, but he does have very good engage for later on. Janna's also pretty good against him. You know, if he engages on somebody, she can just ult and blow them all back. So it's because he can't put enough pressure on Janna in lane, and if you don't pressure Janna in lane, she's just going to outscale you. She's the highest scaling champ support right there with Lulu, I would say. So, you know, if you don't pressure Janna and Rakan can't pressure her that hard early, then it's going to be rough. Okay, so Alistar is probably the best tank right now. It's either Alistar or Sion. I have played Sion some more. I understand the appeal of Sion. He has a very specific niche. We'll talk about him here in a second. But Alistar does have sustain in lane, so he can weather the storm, sort of a Lulu or a Nami. He also has the threat of engaging on them. Once again, that engage is going to be really tough to pull off, because they're going to have Chrysalis, they're going to have Bone Plating, and so if you all in them, there's a good chance they're just going to turn it around on you and possibly kill you. So the all-in right now is really tough for champions like Alistar, but he does have great utility. You know, as the game goes on, he can roam around, make a lot of plays. He's really good if the enemy has an immobile mid laner, so if they have something like a Diana mid lane, then you can run up and kill her a lot off of roams. So that's pretty helpful. If your team just needs to engage in a fight, and you just want to have a tank, you know, he can be very useful. He's good with things like Yasuo, because he has that AoE knockup. That's a great wombo combo. So he is pretty strong. Just keep in mind that you're going to be facing Conqueror top lanes a lot of the time now, and they will carve you up as Alistar, because even when you have your ult going, that true damage cuts through your ult. So, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend playing Alistar a lot right now, but if you want to play an engaged tank, I think that he's one of the better ones out there. And you'll still see him in pro play. So if you're going to play him, I think that running Righteous Glory, Aftershock build is probably the way to go. Yeah, just Aftershock, Bone Plating, Second Wind, Unflinching, Zombie, and Genius. Now, a lot of people won't go Zombie and Ingenious, but I think this is so good. If you're going Righteous Glory, it lowers the combo, or the cooldown of your Righteous Glory, and then oftentimes you'll also be getting a Locket with him, so it'll lower the cooldown on that. So, I think it's a pretty decent build. You know, the other option here would be you could go, a lot of people will go Hex Flash on him. If you can really make that work, they'll go like Hex Flash plus, like either Biscuits or Minion Dematerializer or something like that. If you can make that work with Hex Flash, then that's good, but I don't know. It's a decent engage tool, but there's a lot of like margin for error there. So Alistar's okay. Now, Sion is someone that I've been an outspoken critic of for several patches now. I still don't think he's amazing, but at the same time, I understand his usefulness early on, and I think he's really good in like he's potentially good in a push comp. So the main thing about Sion in the bot lane is he can get banner, he can pressure lanes really quickly because he has no mana problem, so he can get a banner early on. And then with his E, it has tremendous wave clear. If you do the E plus the Q plus something like a Caitlyn Q, it just instantly clears the wave. Or Jhin, you just like E the wave, Q it, and then Jhin just grenades it, and there goes the wave. So he's probably the best mainstream push support right now. Early on, he's very tanky. He does have like some okay engage later on. He falls off pretty hard as the game progresses. I don't like him top lane right now because I think that these Conqueror top laners are just going to carve him up. But I do see the appeal of him. So if you're going to go with him, you know, you'll probably want to go with the Comet build. So I'll just go Comet, Mana Flow, Celerity, Scorch, Bone Plating, Chrysalis. And then get just like Ninja Tabi, Equinox, Banner is very good on him. And then something like Knight's Vow. Now, an appeal also of Sion is you can split push really well, which is kind of weird as a support. But if your team doesn't have a split push option, they don't really have a good split pusher on their team, then you can split because you can use your ult to run to a fight. If it's upriver, around Baron, or something like that, you can use your ult to run over there if you have to. So that is pretty decent on him. I could see a world where you would want to go like Unsealed Spellbook, so later on you could take Teleport on him and split push because he does push so well for a support with Banner of Command. That does give up a lot of early game pressure though, if you do that, because you're not going to be able to take Comet. So I think Comet's probably better. So basically he's just good early pressure and push, and then late game he's good push or with a split push option as a support that's also kind of tanky. So he's kind of in a unique position because of his wave clear and his mana costs. He's someone who could be interesting in certain circumstances. Karma, I think Karma might come back. We'll see. The reason is that Lulu, Nami, and Janna are coming back, and she's pretty good against all of them. The problem is her scaling because... also, you're seeing more Caitlyn. Historically, she's very good with Kate because she has the best wave clear of any of the mainstream enchanters of Lulu, Nami, and Janna. Janna and Nami have almost no wave clear unless you full charge a Janna Tornado, which is questionable, but you can do that for some wave clear. But she has quite a bit because you max her Q. At least you get 3 points in lane, and sometimes people just full max it first. Where is Karma? Now, the problem with that is, you know, once again, it's going to be hard to all-in people because they're going to take Chrysalis and Bone Plating. But she can also take Chrysalis and Bone Plating. And she gets the extra mana off of Mana Flow Band, which is really helpful. So her niche is, it's kind of like she's a Lulu or a Nami, but she doesn't have the heal. She has higher range on her harass. She has 950. So she can outrange and harass them, and she pushes. So she pushes really, really well because this does area of effect damage to a minion wave, and it's not reduced by hitting multiple targets, unlike Lulu, where it's reduced by 70% for multiple targets. And it's on a low cooldown, and it has a low cost. And she gets this mantra back from hitting champions over and over again, and that mantra Q does quite a bit of damage, especially early on. So she's the best push utility support, which is really nice early on. But her CC is lacking. She has Focus Resolve, which, you know, does end up rooting somebody for a pretty decent duration. This is the last thing that you max, though, so it's going to be 1 second. Which is nice, but it's delayed CC, and you have to get really close. So it's decent for all-ins in lane. But near the, you know, the mid to late game, it's not going to stop that Zed from killing your AD carry. It's not going to stop the Olaf from running at your AD carry. You know, it's just a pretty, it's pretty lackluster in terms of crowd control. Not that you're crowd controlling Olaf anyways, I guess, but you see what I'm saying. Like, it is divers. She has a real problem with divers because she doesn't have very good peel for that. And her shield is pretty anemic. They nerfed it a while ago. It only is 170 at max rank versus Lulu and Janna's 210. That's a huge deal. Now, it does get to be a lower cooldown. It's only an 8-second cooldown, and it's lower mana cost, and it has nice range of 800, so that's good. It does also speed people up for a little bit, so it has kind of that Nami effect to it, the 1.5 second good speed ups. That's good. And her Mantra shield is also pretty weak. So now it's 30% of the total amount. I think they did their math wrong here. The bonus shield is 30. So it takes it up to 190 at rank 1. I guess at rank 2, and you're level 2, it'd be like 90. So I'd take it up to like a 250 shield on the single target, and then everyone else is going to get... is only going to get 75 shield. So that was the nerf that really put the nail in the coffin for her, was nerfing this. It used to be 50%, now they've taken it down to 30%, and they nerfed the base shield by quite a bit. So she can still Mantra Inspired on her team. It will still put Ardent Sensor on every single person on your team when you do this, and engage, so that's pretty nice. But because this has been nerfed so much, the Inspire, it has... limited her scaling quite a bit as the game goes on. So she's very good early game aggression, early game push. So if you see her professionally or in high elo, it's probably going to be paired together with Caitlyn. And in solo queue, it can be good with Caitlyn, Varus, Jen, these early game push champions. So it's push, push, push. But in general, Lulu's going to have a similar effect. She can still push with her Q, not as well as Karma. Lulu's trades are going to hurt more because she gets the E plus the Q for the damage. Karma is just pretty much going to only be hitting with her Q. So Lulu's full rotation trades are going to hurt more in lane. Lulu's still going to have respectable push, and Lulu is going to outscale the daylights out of Karma. So that's why I highly favor Lulu. Now, if Lulu's banned and you want to push her, then Karma could be pretty good. But she still feels like she's probably like second string or maybe third string, or like very specific comps, like with Caitlyn. You might see her if Lulu's banned. But yeah, the nerfs were pretty severe to her. When did they do that? I think that might have even been as far back as season 6. Might have been early season 7. I remember kind of the artwork, or I missed kind of the artwork on some of these. This like takes me back to season 1, especially the old looked kind of cool. Okay, they did buff her in 720, so they have given her some buffs, which is nice. Here it is. Yep. That's when they gutted her, 712. So she was very good for like half of last season. And that was when Caitlyn was super good too. So you see Caitlyn Karma all the time. They reduced her base shield from 190 to 170, and then they took it from 50% to 30%. That was just too much. That was too hardcore. Yeah, and they, back in 7-1, they nerfed her here. They nerfed her Defiance. Then they nerfed her again in 6-15. So she just got, like, repeated nerfs. From, like, 6.15 over to 7-10. She got, like, 3 nerfs, each of which was pretty substantial. So I think you might see her back a little bit, but like I said, I would highly expect to see Lulu picked much more often. Soraka can be pretty good. Yeah, we need to go ahead and wrap this up. Soraka can be pretty good. She's just countered too hard by Executioner's Calling, I think. It does help her that it's difficult to all-in her with Chrysalis plus Bone Plating right now. But, you know, pretty much most of her utility is just heal bot. Like, she does have nice trading early on, like with her Q and autos. It's pretty good. It's not as good as Nami or Lulu, but it's pretty solid. And then just later on in the game, she just turns into a heal bot, and Executioner's Calling and Morello Nomicon just completely wreck her still. I really wish they would fix that so that there's more counterplay, like, for Soraka towards that. Because Soraka is, like, one of the most polarizing champions as support. Either she's completely overpowered if they don't get Executioner's Calling, or she is somewhat lackluster if they do get Executioner's Calling. And I just don't think that an 800 gold item should determine whether or not a champion is viable. It just seems too hardcore. So I hope they change that in the future and give some kind of like counter to Grievous Wounds, or like make Soraka's heal also be part shield, or just give her some way to get around that. Like, the way they do that right now is they give her, like, just a super high number and just say, okay, well, we're just assuming that they're going to get Executioner's Calling. And they're just trying to get it right that way, you know? And that's kind of what her ult is all about. It gives you a lot more healing if they're lower health, which is when Morello's has historically kicked in, is when they're under 40% health. And so that's part of why she has that bonus, is to make up for the Morellos. Now, at one point, when she ulted, it used to remove Grievous Wounds and then ult, which was kind of a step in the right direction. Oh man, I missed this artwork too. This was cool. I kind of like the original Soraka. Like, I liked how you could be a mana battery. If you don't know about her originally, it's pretty cool. You could actually use your E on your allies and give them back mana. So you could E enemies and silence them. Temporarily, it was a point-click silence, which was nice. And you could also E to transfer. I think it transferred. Yeah. She trades some of her mana and gives it over to her ally. So I thought that was really cool that you could be a mana battery. So then she had really, like, a really good niche of, like, as a siege champion. So you could constantly give mana back to your allies and constantly heal them up. And it was very good in a siege. So I liked that. I thought she had a very clear identity when that was happening. And when she healed them, she used to give them bonus armor. Now, that was pretty overpowered when she did that. Now, that was on like a 20-second cooldown, though, so it made your heal like something that was just like this huge, powerful heal. But the 20, I don't like that. I like her being able to spam her heal. Like, I like her niche right now as someone who's dangerous, where when she heals, then it also does damage to herself. So I think that's an interesting trade-off. I wish they would just give her back her old Astral Infusion, which was point-click, and it could also, it was dual-purpose. It could serve as a mana battery. I wish they just did something more with that, other than, it just silences and does, like, a little bit of damage and can root people. Like, I wish it had some other kind of buff on it. Or, like, her Q. Like, I wish her Q gave some kind of, like, more buffs to allies. Something like, I just think she needs a little bit more utility in her kit. Because right now, she's really powerful at what she does, which is healing, but if they stop that with an Executioner's, then it's rough. But she's okay. And then she has the same runes as all the other enchanters. Just Airy, down to Scourge, Bone Plating, and Revitalize. You can go Guardian on her, but now that... well, she does take Revitalize. You can still take Chrysalis if you want to. I just think you in this meta right now, you still need that... I just feel like you need the early game aggression. So I guess I'm back on the Airy Scorch train with Soraka. If it's a lane where you're definitely 100% going to lose, you could go Guardian into Ingenious Hunter. I would probably err on the side of early game, though, in this meta. And then Sona, finally, is making a comeback here. And then we'll probably end it pretty soon after this, in like 5 minutes or so. I'll just go through these pretty quickly. The tier 3s, but... Sona has received some buffs recently, but she had a ton of nerfs. Someone was asking me why I don't play Sona as much. It's like, well, she got nerfed a lot earlier on the season. The problem with Sona is she has the tier tax. She has to buy Tear of the Goddess because her mana costs are too high now after they nerfed it on her Q. They have just, and her W is always really expensive. But she has to buy Tear of the Goddess. That's a 750 gold tax. That's a tax that Lulu doesn't have to pay, Janna doesn't have to pay it, Nami doesn't have to pay it. They all have much better mana management than Sona does. So Sona has to buy tier, and that's going to delay your redemption. It's going to delay your Ardent Censer. It's a huge tax on a support. So that's pretty rough. So they did reduce it a little bit there, but these changes are massive, massive changes. Because historically, what has been really good about Sona, and I do have a Sona guide on the channel, is that your Q gave a ton of extra on-hit damage to allies, so it was super valuable. It was really good harassment early on, and then your W gave a ton of shields to your allies later on in the game. So you just got a lot of value out of her. In exchange for that, she has very limited utility. She only has her ult. As a stun, and then she has like if you want to use your E to slow, you can, but you're giving up other possibilities by doing that. So she has limited utility in that sense. So she's just a raw stat stick, pretty much, of healing and damage, and she was very good at that, especially when Ardent Censer was really good, because she applied it to everybody, which is really nice, and she could even use like Athene's Unholy Grail really well because she did good damage in teamfights with her Q. but they nerfed that a lot. So they did give her back some of her mana cost, but they reduced the on-hit damage from 20 to 60 to 30. They cut it in half, 50%. That is a huge, huge deal, because this could apply to everyone on your team in a team fight. In theory, if you touch everybody, they all got an extra 60 damage on their next auto attack. That was really good for taking Barons. Like, she was awesome at taking Barons because she could spam this Q, and everybody would do a lot of extra damage. So yeah, they reduced a huge part of her kit by 50% early on. And then they nerfed her again with this E, and they reduced this by a ton as well. 5 early on is a big deal with this. So that's 5 on the heal. That's 1/7. That's 14% early on of your heal. That's a huge deal. And then they reduced the shield strength by quite a lot too, by 5. So, like, it's still, like, okay later, but it's really, really rough early. So, yeah, the nerf to the W and her Q just really pushed her out of the meta a lot. And they did nerf Airy, Celerity, Scorch, all of this stuff. Those are starting to come back. You know, everybody's getting Airy again. Everybody's getting Scorch again because they've nerfed the Inspiration Tree a lot. They have nerfed the Keystones of Resolve. They've nerfed Dominations. They've nerfed a lot of other stuff. So Sorcery was the first tree to get nerfed because it was the most overpowered tree, as I predicted it would be in the preseason. And so now Sona's stuff is starting to come back. So she's coming back. She's in the best position she's been in for like the last 5 patches or so. So that's why I have her in the top 2, or in the top 2 tiers. You know, she comes in at number 10. So she's still she's doable. But the thing is, that tier tax, the 750 gold to keep up with her mana cost, is pretty brutal. And she has a pretty rough early game and her scaling is just not as much of a payoff as it used to be. So I think that Lulu and Janna probably outscale her now. But she's still serviceable. She's still good. You know, she's still very reliable. You can just point click, you know, Q, auto attack, and do some pretty good trades in lane. I just think that Nami is the premier healer now, and that Nami will totally bust her up in lane, because Nami just has way better trading and way better mana management. And people just don't use Sona correctly. Because her W is absolute trash for healing. Look at this. It's 80 if you're just trying to heal one person for a 30 heal. 80 mana for a 30 heal. That is awful. However, if you heal 2 people, if you heal yourself and an 80 carry, then you get to 60 heal, which is still pretty bad. So you have to use the shield. Like, you have to do it while you're actively in combat trading with somebody. When they're auto-attacking you back, that's when you use your W, so that you shield yourself and hopefully they hit your ally too. So if you get full value out of this shield, if you get 50 shield worth of value and 60 heal worth of value, you know, all of a sudden that's 110. So that's okay for 80, but this used to be much higher. Used to get like 120 or 130 out of it early on. So it's just real, like, most people will use this just to heal up an ally, and that is awful. Nami is way better at that. So anyways, I think she's okay. I just think she's outclassed by Nami, Lulu, and Janna, but she's still alright. Okay, final picks. Leona is someone that has risen up quite a bit. I mean, Leona might even deserve to be in tier 2. And the reason for that is she has very good engage on these champions, which, once again, historically, that's how you kill them, is you have to engage because you're going to lose the long game against them. So I feel like if you're going to play a tank, it has to be an engaged tank, other than Sion, because he just has really good push. Sion's kind of the special case we talked about, but like, it kind of has to be Alistar, it has to be Leona, Blitzcrank, stuff like that, to try to keep up with the enchanters. But I did see a build the other day that was played against me with Leona. I think this is what he was going. Is a press the attack Leona build. Now, when this came out, people were kind of asking me, why don't you do press the attack Leona? Why don't you do press the attack Leona? The problem was all of the 80 carries were going press the attack back then. And so you lost a lot of power by taking that, because you can't expose somebody twice, right? They're not going to take double the damage. So it was just kind of a waste of a rune if you're if your Tristana or your Lucian or whoever had press the attack, because everybody took it in the preseason. But now that they have offered other alternatives, like Fleet Footwork and, you know, they buffed Lethal Tempo and stuff like that, then less people are taking press the attack. So if your AD carry is not going to take press the attack, if they're going to take Fleet Footwork or Lethal Tempo, then press the attack all of a sudden becomes a lot more attractive. Also, they have nerfed Aftershock several times now. And so that's a lot less appealing. And they nerfed Resolve as a primary tree. Because unflinching is so bad. Like, it's okay, but they basically made that a lot less appealing for tanks to go primary Resolve tree. Now, it's still great as a secondary tree when you get two things out of it. When you get Bone Plating and Chrysalis, that's great. But as a primary tree, it kind of sucks. So now you can go press the attack on Leona, get in there, trigger that, and that has a lot of team utility for assassination because it gives everyone on your whole team the 12% extra damage against that target, which is really nice when you're trying to pick people off. So I think that press the attack, Triumph, Tenacity. Now, Tenacity's not great, but that's basically a better version of unflinching. And then Coup de Grace, which allows you to deal even more sort of execution damage on them. Then you can still be pretty tanky by taking Bone Plating and Chrysalis. You can take, you know, Second Wind if you want, but because Leona is primarily an all-in champion, I think Chrysalis is probably a little bit better. So I think that's actually a pretty legit build now, because now you can be pretty tanky with Bone plus Chrysalis, and you can start speccing into more of this damage with PTA. They just increased the adaptive damage on this patch too, so now it does 8 to 12% exposure right off the bat, and then also does 40 to 80. So that's quite a bit of damage, and they just buffed Ignite too. Don't forget that. So I think that Leona, you might see her making a bit of a comeback here, like press the attack Leona with Ignite, and then secondary Chrysalis plus Bone Plating. So I haven't tried it out. That seems like that could be pretty legit. Just keep in mind the caveat that with Leona, she's very dangerous. In a 2-on-2, she's good. If you get ganked, she's really bad. So you want to make sure that you have proper vision so that you don't get baited into fights. So she's okay. She might deserve to take a spot at tier 2, like maybe as high as where Alistar is. Like, she might be a better version of Alistar right now. It's tough to say. I mean, Alistar's historically one of the best engaged tanks, but you know, with this press the attack build is pretty good. And Leona, it's so easy to trigger press the attack because you just E in, then you auto attack, and then your Q resets the auto and stuns them, and boom, there it is. So it's really easy to trigger it, and she does a lot more damage than Alistar, I think. If Alistar gets his trample proc off and like attacks somebody, maybe he does a bit more, but or like does similar damage, but I'm pretty sure that Leona does more. So yeah, I think that Leona with press the attack could be pretty legit right now. Blitzcrank seems like he would be really good in this meta against like Lulu, Nami, Janna. The problem is most of these champions can be pretty quick. So they can dodge him out, and then it's just like one grab is not going to kill them probably if they have Chrysalis Bone Plating. So I don't know. He just doesn't do that much. Like, he can hook people in and maybe kill them, but if you miss your hook, you're just going to get completely blown out of lane. These champions just harass so much, Lulu and Nami especially, in lane, and they can hide behind minions and harass. Because, you know, Lulu just presses E right on top of him, Nami just presses W, and so it just makes it really hard as Blitz, especially before he gets Moby Boots, to get a clean shot to try to hook him. So, I don't know. I think Blitzcrank's a bit lower. If you're going to play Blitz, I would just go full out Predator, Cheap Shot, Zombie, and Genius Hunter, Bone Plating, Chrysalis, and I just get that Predator Moby Boots and just run around the map and just like try to grab people. Just if they have an immobile mid laner, they have a TF, they have a Diana, they have a Talia, something like that, you can run up there and, you know, take some good hooks at them. You can even rotate to top lane maybe. Try to get a hook there. So, a lot of people will go Aftershock on him. I just think that's a little redundant, because when you hook somebody, they're probably going to die, so you don't even need the resistances most of the time. You just want to do as much damage as possible. I think if you're not taking Predator, I would honestly take something probably like Electrocute, just so you deal that burst damage right when you pull them in. So you could, if you don't want to run Predator, you could run Electrocute, Cheap Shot, Zombie Ward, and Genius Hunter and try to do it that way. So it's up to you. He's okay, but if you want to pick him, I would just pick him as all-out, like, massive roam champion and just go from there. Taric has fallen down quite a bit. A lot of this is the fall of Unsealed Spellbook was very good on him. But he's okay. He's just kind of in a position where he's a peeler tank, and you're just going to get blown out by Lulu, Nami, Janna. They're scaling, especially on hyper carries with like Ginsu's Rage Blade. You're just not going to be able to do that much as Taric. Because we're moving into kind of this sustained damage, 80 carry meta a lot of times. So, you know, your ult is nice, but I just feel like Taric has lost a lot of his power. And a lot of that also has to do with, like, just tanks. Eye of the Equinox just feels really awful right now. You know, you can run Guardian Taric, which some people are doing, but Unflinching feels really bad right now. You can get Chrysalis. You can't leverage it that well because your AP, like, AP doesn't scale amazingly with you. It's all right. So he's okay. If you want to build him, I would go Guardian, Bone Plating, Chrysalis, Revitalize, and then Zombie Ward and Genius Hunter. He also has to pay the tier tax, so he has to pay 750 gold to get Tier of the Goddess. You just can't really manage your mana without him. I have tried rushing Redemption, but then you're really squishy if you do that. So yeah, I think you pretty much have to get tier. A lot of people go tier, Equinox, like Locket or Knight's Vow. So he's alright. I think he's fallen out quite a bit. Tahm Kench is another one. I have played Tahm into Leona because Leona is becoming more popular. Or Thresh, and it just feels bad. Like, you still counter them, but you just don't do that much in the game compared to what you do as, you know, Nami or Lulu. Like, you don't have a lot of aggression in lane. Like, yeah, you can tongue lash them a little bit, but that's just nothing compared to how much someone like a Lulu or a Nami can do in lane. So, you'll still see him in pro play. He's still good at protect the, you know, ex-champion comp. But I just feel like for solo queue, he just doesn't have enough lane presence. And I think right now, the Airy plus Chrysalis Bone Plating is just where you want to be. And it just adds so much extra punishment and harassment in lane. Those enchanters just have so much scaling. I think they just crush him early, mid, and late. In pro play also, you can leverage his ultimate a lot better. So people will actually come and like use your ult to rotate around the map and make plays. I just don't feel like that happens a lot in solo queue. Sometimes it does, but I have to almost beg the jungler a lot of times. I'm like, please, come bottom lane. We can ult behind him and kill him. Sometimes they're like, hold on, man. Let me get my Gromp. Let me get my Wolves real quick. I don't care if they're pushed into your tower and they have no escapes. I don't care if they don't have flash. You know, it's just... At higher elo, he's probably a lot better because people will use his ult more. But at lower elo, where people just don't understand, like, how powerful that ult is, 120-second, like, semi-global. It's basically like a TF ult for 2. That's up every 2 minutes. So yeah, it's still probably great in pro play, probably pretty respectable in challenger, but you know, as you kind of move down the elo ladder a little bit, he falls off because his main contribution right now that still makes him like viable is his ult for roaming. Yeah, some people are still going Spellbook, some people are going Glacial Augment. I feel like both of these just do not feel good right now because the Inspiration Tree has been nerfed so much that hurts him. Like, you can go Guardian, but that's going to feel bad too. He doesn't have great itemization. He doesn't have great runes. He still has some really powerful abilities. It's just like his his scaling's just pretty weak. Brand is pretty good. You know, I've had people argue with me before that Brand's better than Zyra. You're never going to convince me of that. Zyra is just much more consistent with her poke. She has much better vision control with her plants, much more reliable damage in team fights, much better solo all-in potential to kill people. Brand sucks at killing people unless they like by himself. Typically, he doesn't do as much as Zyra does because his ultimate's not going to do any damage because there's no bounces. So Brand in a team fight, if everyone just like clumps up together and he bounces that around on everybody and like 3 people get hit by W and your ult tags like 5 people and they all blow up on each other, yeah, sure, he's good. Like in the ideal scenario, yeah, Brand might do more than Zyra, but in real world scenarios, Zyra's just way better. Another thing about Zyra is that she can land her snare, her E, through minions. So that is a huge part about her, is she can throw that E through minions to hit people, whereas Brand has to have a clean shot with his Q. He can't throw it through minions, so he has to kind of walk around the side of the minion wave, and that makes him very vulnerable. So that's the biggest thing about Zyra, is better vision control, better 1v1, comparable team fight presence, better poke in lane, better all-in potential in lane than Brand. So Brand can be good, but I would just play Zyra other than Brand most of the time, unless Zyra's banned, which she's never banned, so, you know, there's just not a lot of times where I would want to play Brand. Zyra's just the same thing, but better. Braum, you know, you still might see him in pro play. He's still pretty good. I know that we have I know Bunny loves Braum on the channel. Bunny's been a long-time supporter of the channel, and I've debated this with him before. I'm not seeing it right now. The itemization on tanks is really poor after the Relic Shield nerfs, and it hasn't gotten any better. The runes are really poor. He has to take Guardian unflinching. So he's still serviceable. He's still good against Twitch. He's still good against Xayah because he blocks their multi-target projectiles. Still good against Ezreal, but I just feel like his core runes, his core items have been nerfed a lot. He's not going to be able to put up enough pressure to pressure the enchanters early on, and they're just going to outscale him and crush him. Now, Braum is pretty good against Nami, so if people actually start playing Nami more, then, you know, you might see more Braum because his, you know, E can block her wave, which is, you know, really good, obviously. So he does have a favorable matchup against Nami. But, you know, he's still serviceable. He's still okay. I just feel like, once again, he's just a peeler support that's going to have a hard time pressuring the enchanters that are ultimately going to outscale him. And so you might see him for protection in pro builds. He still does have, like, you know, like good peeling potential. I just feel like he's, you know, the meta is shifting away from that. You know, a lot of them are still taking inspiration runes. That's a lot worse than it used to be. He can't really leverage Chrysalis that much because he doesn't have good, like, AP or AD ratios. So he's kind of priced into taking second wind. You know, he's alright. I just think most of the time, you know, enchanters are just going to dumpster you as the game goes on, because you can't apply pressure early and you can't really apply that much all-in pressure late. Like, yeah, you can flash ult him and stuff like that, but I just feel like there are better options out there. So, sorry, Bunny. I know Bunny's probably going to say something in the comments, but Braum's awesome. It's like, yeah, you know, if you want to play him, you can play him, man, but I'm just telling you, he's fallen off. I called it last patch. It's definitely happened. You know, a lot of these enchanters. Now, there are definitely some troll picks here. I don't know, like, Champion.gg, why all this stuff is trolling. You know, Xin Zhao is not, and Rek'Sai are not the best supports. I think it's counting junglers for some reason. I don't really, or like Nidalee. So, like, these top 6 are really troll. Olaf, yeah, I guess their system's broken. I don't know. Let me pull up op.gg here real quick. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be like Korean Plat Plus. In Korea, he is still really high win rate at Plat Plus. But as you see, like, off of pro builds, he's only 50% among, and a lot of these are kind of North American pros. So, you know, he is still really good in pro play and, like, in Korea and stuff like that. But I'm not going to recommend him on my tier list. You know, I think that he's fallen too far. If you're really good with him, if you have a high win rate with him, more power to you. But I think the meta has just moved against him too much. So if you are a, you know, challenger Korean, sure, play him a lot. You know, they also have Soraka really high, and Thresh. This is pretty wacky. It has a tier that's not even necessarily the highest win rate though. They have Bard. What are they building on Soraka to put her up that high? Same stuff? I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. But anyways, I definitely would not recommend Thresh up that high. Anyways, so, you know, so my tier list, if you want to follow an op.gg tier list, that's fine. I don't understand some of that stuff that's going on there. But anyways, Morgana's okay. She's good against Rakan. She's good against Leona. She just doesn't pressure as much as Nami. She doesn't pressure as much as the Enchanters, so they're going to outscale her. And that's just basically it. But
Internet security alert.
Wow.
Your computer...
Okay. op.gg's tripping. Anyways, Bard can be good. You can take Electrocute. You can pressure early. You know, if you get really far ahead on the Enchanters, you know, you can kill them. They are going to be vulnerable, but once again, it's going to be hard to kill them through Chrysalis and Bone Plating. But you can play him. Bard's alright. I'm just trying to finish up this video. It's like an hour and 30, hour and 40 already. Shen, good. Good pressure early. I just think that Leona and Alistar are going to be better at what he does, but he's still alright. Thresh, if you're a one-trick, play him. If you're not, don't. I mean, that's basically it. He's in a better spot than he has been because people are playing enchanters instead of tanks. He's really bad against tanks, but he still has poor runes, poor itemization, and he's still really hard to play. But, you know, if you can pull him off, then it's good. Okay. But anyways, that's going to be it for the tier list. I wanted this to be faster, but I also wanted to be thorough as usual, so it ended up taking quite a long time, but hopefully you'll watch it. It will have timestamps, so you can at least jump around and listen to your favorite parts. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.